Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Here I am. I was thinking yesterday and even a little bit this morning how much I miss Rush Limbaugh. He passed away a few years ago, and sometimes you don't really realize how much you miss somebody until, like for me, doing something like this. If I could be like anybody in this type of world, in this type of realm, it would be like Rush Limbaugh or maybe Charlie Kirk. But Rush Limbaugh was special to me because I found him first in the sense of when I was much younger than Charlie Kirk, even though Charlie Kirk was a spectacular young man, and I appreciated him very much. But I really miss Rush Limbaugh. Every time I open up on one of these episodes, I think I should do it kind of like Rush, Greetings, conversationalists all across the fruited plains. It is I, your Maharishi, the all-seeing, all-knowing, all-caring Maharishi. Anyways, I just missed that with Rush. He was such a great commentator, a great journalist in that sense in his own right, and his ability to connect with people was unlike anybody else. The only other person that came close to that is Charlie Kirk, and I think actually Charlie Kirk had a much wider, bigger audience because of what he did and how he did it. But there still will be no one like Rush Limbaugh. So Rush, you are very, very, very much missed. And I appreciate your life and your work. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about something, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold it together because of what I'm going to talk about. I went into Perplexity. It's a AI kind of a thing, but it does more of research. It's more research. So I went into Perplexity. I said, just give me a list of all the politicians that have either resigned or been forced out due to sexual impropriety. I didn't even know how to spell impropriety, but I figured it out. And it did. It gave me a list. And it gave me a list of some. I don't know if this is all of them, but nonetheless, as I was reading through the list, I was really heartbroken. Because when you think about sexual misconduct, I understand everybody's human and everybody can give into it, at least on some level in some way. But nonetheless, when it comes to these positions of, say, politicians, people in our government and such, we tend to think that it's only the Democrats. And there's reason why. Because let's face it, the Democrat Party doesn't really have much morality in it, okay? But what really saddened me and broke my heart was there was a lot of Republicans in there as well, because we tend to be the conservatives. We tend to be more Christ-based. I almost said Christ-like, but Christ-based, Christian-based, Bible-based. And so for a party that really is more Bible-based than the other, there was too many, way too many. One is too many. But ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't just one Republican, nor was it one Democrat. So I want to read this. Rush used to say it like this: in my stack of stuff, we'll get to it. Well, my stack of stuff is a few sheets of paper stapled together. But also, I don't want to just focus on the politicians. I said to myself, self, I wonder if Perplexity, and I also went to Grok on that one, could give me a list of the pastors and church leaders that had also been had to resign or been forced out because of sexual impropriety. That one broke my heart because I've known, we've seen it, we've heard about it. It's always makes the news. But when you put it into a list and you can just go this one, this one, this one, this one, ladies and gentlemen, it makes me wonder what in the world have we become, not only as a nation, but as a church in this nation. And I've always said this, and this is the truth, okay? The way the church goes is the way the nation goes. So we can look at these politicians and go, bad, bad, bad. Look at what you're doing. Bad, bad, bad. But they're learning, I hate to say, from the pastors and church leaders in the United States of America. Because if we can't get it together, if pastors and church leaders can't get it together, how in the world do we think that the politician's going to get it together? We are supposed to be their moral compass. Okay, and politically, it was always like the, if you will, the Republicans or the conservatives were the moral compass of politics. Excuse me, my nose is itching for some reason. But we were supposed to be the moral compass of politics in that regard. But the reality was the church, and hence the pulpit, pastors and church leaders, whoever's in the pulpit, we are the moral compass of the nation, thus ultimately the moral compass of the political parties, Democrat, Republican, and all the political parties, the smaller ones that don't ever get elected and all that. So anyways, if the pulpit is corrupt, then it's not strange or weird that everything else is corrupt, including and especially politicians. So let me read some of this. So I asked it, give me a list, of those who have been or had to resign or forced out due to sexual impropriety. So this is what, where did I get this list? I think this was from Perplexity. Perplexity shot this one out to me. So I just printed it up and I figured I would read it to you just because. It is impossible to list literally all politicians worldwide, or even in the U.S., who have ever resigned or been forced expelled from office due to sexual impropriety. It says impossible to list all politicians, even in the United States, who have ever resigned or been forced out due to sexual impropriety. I don't know why that's such a hard word to say, propriety. Isn't that, just right there, when I read that first sentence, I was stunned that it is impossible. It says for perplexity, an AI-driven program to literally list all the politicians in the United States. I'm not focusing on the world, but in the United States that have ever resigned or been forced out due to sexual impropriety. It's been so many, ladies and gentlemen, that even Perplexity can't keep up with them. AI can't keep up with them. They keep telling us how smart AI is. Well, let me go this. So such cases, now again, I didn't put in there just in the United States. I did on other questions after this, but just in the United States, this went, this is directing even at worldwide, but also the United States. So keep that in mind. So such cases span centuries, all levels of government, federal, state, local, and countries, with a sharp increase after the 2017 Me Too movement. One 2018 analysis found that at least 104 of 138 accused U.S. elected or appointed officials left office following allegations. So that was just the 2018 or the 2017 Me Too movement. So in 2018, there was 138 elected officials accused, and 104 of them left office. In 1 year, because of this Me Too movement, 104 left office, but 138 were accused. Now, we don't know what happened to the other 34, if they were convicted, if it was true, just people spouting off what they didn't like them, but 104 left office. So that tells me 104 out of 138 that were accused were indeed guilty of what they were convicted of, or not convicted, but accused of. So the list below focuses on notable U.S. federal politicians, primarily members of Congress, where sources explicitly tie the resignation non-reelection under pressure, or forced exit directly to sexual impropriety, not just unrelated scandals or affairs where they stayed in office. It draws from historical records and post-Me Too cases up to 2026. Both major parties have had such cases. That breaks my heart, ladies and gentlemen, that both parties, like I said, we tend to think that this is just a problem in the Democrat Party, but clearly this is a problem in the Republican Party as well. Many more state, local officials, and some international cases exist, of course, but we're not focusing on international. We're focusing on the United States. So notable U.S. federal politicians, Congress, of the Democrats, Representative Mel Reynolds resigned 1995 after conviction for statutory rape of a 16-year-old campaign volunteer. So Mel Reynolds, Democrat, raped a 16-year-old girl. Representative Eric Massa, I think that's how you say it, of New York, resigned 2010 amid an ethics probe into groping and tickling male staffers. I'm sorry, it's just that still gets me. So Eric Massa was groping and tickling male staffers and had to resign in 2010, a Democrat. Representative... This guy, I'm going to read his name. I have a hard time even reading his name, especially on the air, because it sounds like a 4-year-old with potty mouth. His name is Anthony Weiner, and I think that's how you say his name. I think that's how you pronounce it, Weiner. So forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, for sounding like a 4-year-old with potty mouth, but Representative Anthony Weiner of New York resigned 2011 after admitting to sending sexually explicit photos to women via Twitter. Representative David Wu of Oregon, again Democrat, resigned 2011 after accusations of unwanted sexual advances towards a fundraiser's daughter. Representative John Conyers of, is that Michigan? Resigned 2017 after multiple sexual harassment allegations and a settlement with a staffer. Senator Al Franken of Minnesota resigned 2018 after accusations from 8 women of groping and forcible kissing. Representative Katie Hill. Now, I remember this one, of course, because Katie Hill was right here in kind of a local girl. Katie Hill, Democrat, California, resigned 2019 amid an ethics investigation into alleged extramarital affairs with staffers. And this is recently, as a matter of fact, this is going on right now. Eric Swalwell of California, Democrat, resigned April 2026 after multiple women accused him of sexual harassment and assault, including rape allegations in one case. He denied the claims but faced a health ethics investigation and bipartisan expulsion pressure. Now, I believe now, of course, that's not all of them, ladies and gentlemen. As this said earlier, there would be too many to just really even see here. I'd be here reading these lists for probably hours. But now of the Republicans, now remember, that's at the federal level. Of the Republicans, Representative John Hinson of I believe that's Massachusetts, resigned 1981 after charges related to attempted sodomy, oral sex with a male Library of Congress employee. He would resign in 1981. I want to read that again because this is disgusting. It doesn't matter if this is Republican or Democrat. It's disgusting. But because it's a Republican, I'm even more disgusted because, as I said, Republicans are supposed to be known and stand on the high moral ground and be known for that, and be known for Christian ethics and background. And here's this guy who's a Republican representative resigned. John Hinson resigned 1981. Now, this goes back to 1981, so not that means anything other than this goes back to 1981. He resigned after charges related to attempted sodomy and oral sex with a male Library of Congress employee. It's unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Senator Robert Packwood, I think that's Senator, Senator Robert Packwood of Oregon, again, Republican, resigned 1995 after 29 women accused him of sexual harassment, abuse, and assault. Representative Blake Farenthold of Texas, again, Republican, resigned 2018 after reports he used taxpayer funds to settle a sexual harassment claim from a former staffer. Representative Tim Murphy of Pennsylvania resigned 2017 after reports he pressured a mistress with whom he had an affair to get an abortion and created a hostile office environment. Yeah, I would say that if you are kind of forcing women to murder their babies, that's a hostile office environment, especially against the unborn. Shame on you, Tim Murphy. But Tim Murphy, Pennsylvania, again, Republican. Representative Trent Franks of Arizona resigned 2017 after admitting he asked female staffers about serving as surrogates for $5 million amid broader harassment allegations. So, surrogates, serving as surrogates. Anyways, Trent Franks of Arizona. Patrick Meehan of Pennsylvania resigned 2018 after using taxpayer funds to settle a sexual harassment claim from a former aide. Again, a Republican. And this is also something that's going on right now. Representative Ernest Tony Gonzalez from Texas, Republican, resigned April 2026 after admitting to an affair with a staffer who later died by suicide and facing sexual misconduct allegations, including inappropriate texts and favoritism. He faced a house ethics probe and expulsion pressure. So I remember reading a few things about Tony Gonzalez, and again, this is going on right now as we speak. So the alleged accusations is, he has this affair with this staffer. From what I understand, from what I read, from what I understand, again, you know how these things go, especially when something breaks. You know, the story is really big, and then as days and weeks go by, the story comes, you find out really what's going on. So we're still in that process. So what I read, and this is what I read, this is not, I don't know this for a fact, ladies and gentlemen, from what I understand, Tony Gonzalez had this relationship, this affair with this female staffer. This female staffer, from what I read, was married and had children, and then later went and committed suicide. And that kind of opened the can of worms, so to speak, in that sense. And it's terrible that this woman, I don't know why, I can only assume, and my assumption, just knowing the very little that I know, she was probably very ashamed of what she did and didn't know how to make it better. And if she is truly married and has kids, she might be in that place like, how do I face my husband? How do I face my kids again? This thing is going to haunt me. And of course, when it comes out and it's going through the news, and Tony Gonzalez is on the stand, and everybody knows who this woman is, and people are asking questions, I don't know. I'm assuming that she probably felt so much grief and shame that she committed suicide. Now, again, I don't know. Let me read this. Notes on the Federalist. Some earlier cases, example, the 1970s, Page scandals, or 1980s, involved both parties but did not always result in immediate resignation. Post-2017 cases often involve staffers, lobbyists, colleagues, and led to quicker exits due to public pressure and ethics probes. A few members, example, Representative Ruben Kihuen, Democrat of Nevada, or Republican Joe Barton, Republican in Texas, chose not to seek re-election amid allegations, but are not always counted as formal resignations. So here's some more. U.S. governors. Remember, these are all people who either resigned or were forced out of office due to sexual impropriety. So now we're looking at U.S. governors. selected notable cases. These aren't the only ones. These are the notable cases. Governor Elliot Spitzer, Democrat of New York. There's a lot of people from New York that can't keep it in their pants. I've been noticing that. New York has a problem with this. He resigned in 2008 after being linked to a prostitution ring. So Elliot Spitzer, Democrat, New York, didn't just mess around, but he was linked to a prostitution ring. Governor Jim McGreevey, Democrat, New Jersey, resigned 2004 after admitting an extramarital affair with a male aide who threatened a sexual harassment lawsuit. So I'm assuming Jim McGreevey was married to a woman, but he was messing around with a man, or a male. I shouldn't call him a man, but a male. And he only stepped down and resigned when that male he was messing around with threatened a sexual harassment lawsuit. Governor Eric Greitens, Republican of Missouri, resigned 2018 amid allegations he coerced a woman into sexual conduct and used a nude photo as blackmail, plus related felony charges, it says. And that's, again, ladies and gentlemen, Republican. Now, you might be wondering, why am I reading even the Republicans? I'm a Republican. I'm a conservative. Why am I reading the Republicans? It makes us look bad. Yes, it does. But I wrote a book a few years ago, and the name of the book is Transitions. And in that book, and I say this quite often, you cannot fix what you're not willing to face. If you don't want to face it, if you don't want to take a good look at it, you're not going to fix it. It doesn't matter. Let's say it's a rainy day and you realize my roof is leaking. Okay? You have a choice. You can work it out to where you get up on that roof, find the leak, and do the work to fix the leak, or you could just turn your back on it and walk away and act like nothing's happening and maybe hope that it goes away, which it never does. It just gets worse, But if you want to fix the problem, you got to face the problem. You got to be honest about it and face the problem. And that goes with anything. For those of you who struggle with your diet and maybe overeating, you won't fix the problem. You won't lose the weight. You won't get healthy until you face the problem. Those of you who are saying, man, I really got to get into the gym or get myself in shape in that sense, I'm getting a little soft around the middle. Hey, you're not going to fix the problem until you actually face the problem. Not just a loose acknowledgement, I need to get in the gym, and you don't do anything about it. You don't look into it. You don't face it. You don't get on that machine and start working out. You have to face it. So us Republicans, us conservatives, let me tell you something. We've got to face these problems. We got to fix these problems. Well, the Democrats as well, but let's face it, the Democrats won't. That's just who they are. But that's not who we are as Republicans. No, don't misunderstand me. That's who these Republicans are. That's who these guys are, because it's apparent. They either had to step down or resign because of their sexual impropriety. That's who they are. But as a group, that's not who we are. And we as a group have to stop coddling and stop allowing those, basically rhinos, because they're starting to act like Democrats in that sense. I'm just being honest. We've got to stop letting those into our mix. And if there's not just an allegation, because anybody can say anything, but if there's any kind of proof that this happens, then we need to get rid of them as fast as possible. Why? We need to clean out. We need to clean out our ranks, especially of this kind of perversion. So let me go on. Andrew Cuomo, Democrat, New York, resigned in 2021 after a state investigation found he sexually harassed at least 11 women, including staffers. When you see that, it's bad enough that somebody has an affair with a woman or comes on to or sexually advances on a woman. That's bad enough, unless it's their wife, but you know what I mean. That's bad enough. 11 women? Prostitution rings, like this Swalwell guy. Women are coming out of the woodwork to say, he did this, he did that, he said this, he said that. Anyways. Now, let me keep going. We're almost through this first part. State legislators dozens, it says dozens more state lawmakers have resigned or been removed. One 2018 compilation documented at least 25 cases in the Me Too era alone, affecting both parties roughly equally. Multiple California Democrats like Matt DeBabna, Raul Bacanegra for groping inappropriate behavior, Arizona Republican Don Shooter expelled for a pattern of harassment, others in Colorado, Florida, Minnesota, Ohio, Oklahoma. Unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. Dozens had to step down or resign or get booted out. Internationally, we don't want to deal with that. We're not worried about the international scene. I'm just focusing on right here in terra firma, United States of America, land of the free. But that freedom, we are land of the free. We have freedom. But it seems like a lot of people say, I'm free to, make these unwanted sexual advances on other women other than my wife. I'm free to grope. I'm free to force sexual conduct on these women or demand it from them. This is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. And I know that's not about our American freedom. I'm just saying that it just seems like these guys seem to think that they get into these certain positions and offices. It goes to their head. They think they're untouchable. They could do anything. And that woman who I find attractive, she better give me what I want, or I'll make their life a living hell with some, what was that one? The office. Now they have this toxic work environment because, Bobo can't keep it in his pants. Senator Bobo, and again, I'm disgusted by this. Republicans, we know this about the Democrats, so I am concerned about it because it's happening. Doesn't matter who it is, it's happening. And both parties, all of our government, federal, state, local, we really need to go through with a fine-tooth comb and get rid of these bad apples. Because when you hear about this guy that was part of a prostitution ring, and you're in that high-ranking position and you're part of a prostitution ring, what is wrong with you? 11 women come forward and say, this guy, made all these sexual advances and such on us. Some guy in the Library of Congress trying to force somebody who works for the Library of Congress into disgusting, perverted male sodomy sex. How disgusting. And honestly, as a believer in Jesus Christ, and I know that this is going to go out there for people even worldwide to listen to and get a hold of, I find it very difficult to even say some of these things. I'm doing my best not to get too graphic, but I want to bring out the information so ladies and gentlemen, who we are voting for. Okay, now I know that's not what any of us voted for, but let's face it, if they're doing these things while in office, we sort of did vote for that. And so we're going to have to make better choices when we go to the voting booth. Here locally in Lancaster, we just had our elections for city council. Now, I ran for city council a couple of years ago. But, so I kind of understand the machine in that sense. But we just had our elections, and I went to a forum where many, not all of them, but the people that were running for city council, there was two positions. For those two positions, it was kind of a meet and greet, but also they had this panel where questions were asked of them. They get to answer it. They get to kind of, debate a little bit. It wasn't an open debate in that sense, but a little bit of debate. And I can honestly say I was heartbroken because there was a panel of about, I believe there was 5 or 6 people up there, all running for the position, two seats. And honestly, not one of them really had anything concrete to say in the sense of, this is how I'm going to make your life better, citizens of Lancaster. Really not one of them. I know they would argue with me if they hear me, but here's what they did. And I remember this when I ran as well. They pointed out problems. Oh, we have a problem here. We have a problem there. We have a problem with this. We have a problem with that. And it always comes down around here to crime and homelessness. Yes, other things, but those are the two big ones. But not one of them could tell us what they wanted to do to lower crime or fix homelessness. It was just always, we have to be compassionate. This is a problem. They're here. We'll try to get more money. But for what? What are you going to do? And it was really strange. But anyways, so none of them in that sense. So I'm somewhat familiar, and it's raw with me right now because of what happened with this election and the people that I really wanted to see in those positions didn't make it. And it was really, really upsetting on a lot of levels because someone who didn't have any answers, real answers, only could see problems but couldn't see solutions, they're the ones that got in there. So when I'm looking at this list, and it's not just about not having answers in that sense or not being able to articulate, this is what I want to do to fix this direct problem, and make it, and be able to explain it in such a way that people go, yeah, that's good. I can see how that could work. They couldn't do that. And now they're going to help run our city, and they couldn't even really run their campaign very well. And then again, we get back to lists like this with all this sexual impropriety. I'm not saying the people in my city are doing that. The people in the city council are doing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying these people that were on that panel. That's not I'm saying that when you deal with say weak candidates on one hand, right, and then they get in, these candidates that get in on these state levels and these federal levels, and now they're trying to engage in illicit sex. They're cheating on their wives. They're making advances on not just one woman, several women, and some men making sexual advances on other men. I mean, it's a disgusting display of how bad our governments right now. When I say governments, it's really government broken up into federal, state, local, they have become, so I'm really concerned in this area, and it's time, Republicans, and it's time, Democrats, it's time for all of us Americans to clean house, to really clean house. Now, again, as I think I alluded to it early on, I was looking at this from more of a political standpoint initially. And then as I was looking this up and I get these lists and I started printing them, then I thought to myself, I said, self, because I like to talk to the smartest person in the room. So that's usually myself. Talk to myself a lot. So if you ever see me talking to myself, it's because I am having a conference with the smartest person in the room. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm having fun with this. I'm just having fun with this. As you can see behind me, I am the only person in the room. So who else am I going to talk to? Anyways, so I said self. I wonder if I can get a list of the pastors, preachers, church leaders that have either resigned or been forced out due to sexual impropriety. I like that word, impropriety. And of course, well, let me read this. Okay, this is what Grok. This one was from Grok. So Grok, I don't know how they came up with that name, but Grok. It sounds like a caveman, like a cartoon caveman, or like Captain Caveman from back in the day, and who was the other ones? Anyways, Grok. So Grok, the caveman, says there is no single complete public list of all U.S. pastors and church leaders who have resigned or been forced out due to sexual impropriety. Such cases span decades, involve. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start that sentence over because I just hit something that it just pierced my heart. Such cases span decades, involve thousands of churches across denominations, especially evangelical and Protestant ones, and often go unreported, are handled privately, or result in internal discipline without public notice. So they don't really have a list of all of them because a lot of it's still hidden away. Investigations like the Southern Baptist Convention in 2022 report documented over 700 victims and hundreds of accused clergy staff from the 1980s to the 2020s. But not every case led to a public resignation, and many involved non-pastors. So 700 victims, hundreds of accused clergy and staff from the 80s up to the, present or close to the present. Below is a section, we'll read that, of notable publicly reported cases where pastors or senior leaders, church leaders resigned or were removed specifically due to allegations or admissions of their sexual misconduct, abuse, harassment, or related moral failure, sexual sin, a common church euphemism. I don't know why Grok decided to use words that I can't pronounce. I focus on verified news reports. So this is Grok speaking now. I focus on verified news reports and prioritize high profile or recent examples. This list is not exhaustive, and it says that in bold letters, not exhaustive. Hundreds more exist, especially lower profile ones in local churches. So what I'm about to read to you is just the more high profile. Hundreds more exist, it says. So recent high-profile cases, mostly 24 and 25. So this is mostly 2024 and 2025. So just basically one full year, or maybe, let's see, I'll give it 2 years, all of 2024 and all of 2025, just to make it go down a little bit easier. So about 2 years, and concentrated in Texas, it says. A notable wave of resignations and firings occurred in the Dallas-Fort Worth area starting mid-2024, with at least 11 to 14 North Texas pastors from megachurches affected by sexual misconduct allegations or admissions. Before I read this, I'm going to take a sip of my Starbucks decaf. I've been drinking decaf for the past, maybe a little over a month now. Anyways, and I'm kind of testing to see if my blood pressure and heart palpitations go down, okay? But I think the heart palpitations are due to when I look at my beautiful wife, my heart just flutters. So it's not really the caffeine, it's my Linda. But as far as the blood pressure, I'm testing to see if it's the caffeine or if it's my Linda as well. So anyways, okay. So this is, again, concentrated in Texas. Okay, so I know others have happened other places, but this is just focusing on Texas. This is wild. So Robert Morris. Now, this one breaks my heart. He's a Gateway Church in South Lake, Texas. This one breaks my heart because, and I'm embarrassed to even say this because Christians would say, well, why didn't you have discernment? Why didn't you see this in this guy? And I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I've never met Robert Morris, okay? So I read his book. I read one of his books. I didn't really follow him because I don't listen to a lot of preachers and stuff, but I read his book. It was, in my opinion, it was a great book for what it was. I have since thrown it out. I also had a DVD set of training and teaching based upon that particular book, which I, again, threw out. You say, well, why? It had nothing to do with these allegations or anything or him resigning. Maybe not. I don't like to take chances. What was the spirit he was in when he wrote that book? I would like to think that he was forgiven because he was supposedly had I don't want to call it an affair, but was molesting earlier in his life, but molesting, when I say earlier in his life, he was an adult. A young girl, I believe she was about 12 years old at the time, repeatedly, several times, and it didn't come out until a little bit later. And he resigned officially in 2028, and he even went to prison for it. I believe he went to prison for only 6 months, which when I saw a video of him getting out of prison, I thought to myself, now again, I liked this guy before that. I don't like any of this. I don't accept it. I don't like it. That's why I threw all this stuff out, because I didn't want even the, I don't know. I don't know what spirit he was in or under or filled with, when he wrote that book. I would like to think that he had repented since then and this just caught up with him. But part of truly repenting is making right what you broke, who you hurt, Anyways, so Robert Morris, he resigned. Here it is. After admitting to inappropriate sexual behavior with a 12-year-old girl in the 80s. So that was a long time ago, okay, in the 80s. So I hope that since then he made it right, at least with God in that regard. But he should have went back and made it right with this young lady and that young lady's family. And just, if it was a beating, whatever, take it. You did the crime, do the time. Anyways, John McKenzie, another one. Founding lead pastor of Hope Fellowship Church in Frisco, Texas, resigned September 2025 after confessing to sexual sin and moral failure described as a pattern of consensual behavior, making him unfit. So Josiah Anthony, lead pastor, Cross Timbers Church. See, a lot of these I never even heard because, again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't turn on my wife and I, we have a TV in our house, and we have, we don't have cable. We have a Fire Stick, and we watch what we want to watch when we want to watch. We don't sit down and listen to the news. I get my news online. I get my news through different news organizations, outlets. One of them being Fox News. I know a lot of people have Fox News, but that's not the only one. OAN, I sometimes go to OAN. I sometimes go to Newsmax. I go to Daily Wire. I know that's not technically a news outlet, but it is a journalistic on current events outlet. So I get a lot of my news from different sources that I trust. And I'm able to, even the ones that I'm not 100%, I know that I can't trust them 100%. I have enough that I'm looking at from others that I can get through the nonsense, the opinions, and get to the truth. You don't get that if you go to CNN. Anyways, so I don't know about this unless I pick up some story while I'm doing my research on other things. I don't know. I knew about Robert Morris because, again, this was somebody, it was big and it was everywhere, but it was somebody that I liked until this. And now I had to say to everybody, I'm sorry. I apologize. I mean, I didn't do anything, but just the mere fact that I gave myself on any level to that nonsense, I'm sorry. Anyways, let me get back to this. Where was I? Did I say? Oh, yeah, Josiah Anthony resigned. Late 2024, July 2024, over hurtful and inappropriate actions, including sexual communication with women via text, social media, non-consensual due to power imbalance. Okay. Luke Cunningham, youth pastor. I think I remember this one. Lakeside Baptist Church, Granbury, Texas, fired early June 2024, arrested on charges of sexual assault of a child, allegations from a prior church, 2026 to 2028, or at 2018. I'm sorry, 2016 to 2018. I'm trying to go fast, and I apologize. Ronnie Goins, I think that's how you pronounce his name, lead pastor, Koinonia Church, Arlington, Texas, arrested July 2024 on indecent sexual assault charges, later voluntarily stepped down but denied the charges. And on this, I know that there's a lot of people that throw out these allegations and accusations that sometimes aren't true. Somebody gets hurt. I've heard of this in the past. I've heard of these stories. I've read of these stories where like a pastor, pastoring church, he and his wife pastoring church, one of the ladies in the church takes a liking to the pastor. And that's usually when they say, oh, God told me I'm supposed to be the pastor's wife. He has to divorce his present wife and marry me. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's some people that are that delusional. You have to you have to divorce your wife and marry me, because that's who God is putting us together. So you have to do something that God is against, especially for just any reason, divorce. So you got to do a big, huge negative to get this big, huge positive. It doesn't work that good way. I'm not saying any of these guys were facing that. I'm not saying. But also when the pastor says, no, listen, I'm happy with my wife. We are madly in love. We are good. I don't want anything to do with you. We're not getting married. Sometimes, not always. But women that are that delusional, and it can be men, people, I should just say, people that are that delusional, will often go off and start lying, cheating, doing, starting rumors, all of this problems to get back at the man, or in some cases the woman, that did them wrong. It's really, really, really kind of disgusting. Where was I? Oh, Luke. Okay, Ronnie Goins. Tony Camarada, associate pastor, Stonebriar Community Church in Frisco, Texas. Wow, Frisco really had a bad time. Fired July 2024 after confessing to a moral failure. That's all it says. It doesn't say what that moral failure is. But, I'm not even going to get into that because I don't know. Taryn Dames, senior pastor, North Dallas Community Bible Fellowship, Plano, Texas. Removed May 2024 after arrest for solicitation of prostitution. I'm sorry, I couldn't get that out. I have a hard time with these types of things. Steve Lawson, lead preacher, Trinity Bible Church, Rockwall, Texas, removed September 2024 over an inappropriate relationship with a woman. Ladies and gentlemen, again, why am I reading these? Airing the dirty laundry of the church. You can't fix what you won't face. I figured if I was going to do that with on the political spectrum, we better, if we're going to sit here and if I'm going to expect the Democrat Party, the Republican Party to go through and get themselves together, get their house cleaned up, well, I better expect that the church does it first. I have a few more that I'm going to read, and then I'm going to wrap this up, because this is heartbreaking. It makes me angry, but more than that, it breaks my heart, because every one of these people that I named, whether they be the politicians, but especially church leaders, they affect upwards tens of thousands of people. And depending, like Robert Morrison, he was on TV, he wrote the books and all that. Hundreds of thousands of people are disenfranchised and hurt, affected negatively because of his moral failure. And it goes the same for all of these guys. So Jerry Nickerson, student pastor, Hope Fellowship Church, Frisco, Texas. Frisco, Texas? What's going on down there? You know what? Maybe we need to get a prayer group to go down there and break the power of that sexual wickedness over Frisco area, Frisco, Texas, and that entire area. It's a demon. He was fired January 2025 after confessing to inappropriate contact with a minor 10 years earlier at another church with a minor. Other Texas cases from early 2025 involving child-related allegations include arrests, firings of pastors such as Bruce Holland, former Calvary Chapel of the Woodlands, child pornography, Joel La Fury, Iglesia Cristiana Verdad Viviente, child abuse, Timothy Nail, former Mount Pisgah Baptist, child touching. Notable historical cases, this is pre-2024. So everything that I wrote to you, basically, not only, there was a few I think that went back, didn't it? No, these are all 2025 resignations. That's sad, ladies and gentlemen. That was just like basically a 1 year, maybe 2 year span. So pre-2024, Bill Hybels, founding pastor of Willow Creek Community Church in Illinois, resigned 2018 after multiple women accused him of sexual harassment and misconduct. Brian Houston, now I heard of this. Now that's in Australia, but he had churches here that were connected to him as well. Global senior pastor, co-founder of Hillsong Church, resigned March 2022 amid complaints of inappropriate conduct with women. That was a mess, ladies and gentlemen. Carl Lentz, he was part of that Hillsong family, pastor of Hillsong New York City, resigned 2020 after reports of multiple extramarital affairs. Andy Savage, pastor of High Point Church, Tennessee, resigned 2018 after admitting to a sexual incident with a high school student 20 years earlier. I would like to look into that because 20 years earlier, how young was he? How old was she? I'm not saying it would make it right, but anyways, there's just some things that can be in the mix there too. Johnny Hunt, former SBC, I'm assuming that Southern Baptist Congress pastor, president and pastor, resigned from North American Mission Board in 2022 after an allegation of sexually assaulting another pastor's wife in 2010. What is wrong with these? Older examples, and I remember this when I was young, Jimmy Swaggart resigned 1988 after an affair with a prostitute. Ted Haggart resigned 2006 after admitting to a relationship with a male escort while using drugs. So drugs and being with basically a male prostitute, Ted Haggart. And I remember both of those, and the harm and the pain that it brought. Because, again, now I was young, but Jimmy Swaggart, I remember that when he was going through all of that. And I always liked Jimmy Swaggart back in the day. Loved his piano playing. He was a great piano player. He was related to Jerry Lee Lewis, and both of them excellent piano players. And so there was this love for Jimmy Swaggart for what he stood for, or what he preached, what we thought he stood for, and his music and such. It was, imagine that Jerry Lee Lewis kind of piano playing in gospel music. It was beautiful. He let a lot of people down. He broke a lot of hearts, even to this day, supposedly he found forgiveness and reconciliation and healing, but there's still that sting in the heart of many over what he did and what led to his resignation. So, again, I think I read all of them. That's it right now, but that's enough. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Ladies and gentlemen, that was just the tip of the iceberg, not only in politics, the political realm, but in the church realm. We've got to do something, ladies and gentlemen. This is getting out of hand. This is crazy. And, I'm not one that comes on here and starts blasting people. I'm not a heresy hunter. These are names that have been out there, as you see, that are well known. It's out there. It's been in the press. It's been in the news. I'm not here to, maybe they've made it right with Jesus. Maybe they made it right with their family. Maybe they made it right with their churches. Maybe they made it right with the victims. I don't know. Hopefully they do. But nonetheless, these are things, and so the reason I'm reading these names is just to show you that we have a huge problem in our political realm in this country, but also in the church realm. Huge problem, and it needs to be fixed. So you denominational guys, you church leaders that maybe like a bishop, you're over other churches, other ministries and such. I think it's time. Unless you're messing around, if you're messing around, don't do this. You just simply resign and get it right. But it's time to start having meetings with your leaders, with the churches that are under you, with the pastors that are under you. Read them the right act. Oh, well, they're not sinning. Maybe they're not. But you let them know what will happen if you find out that they are. You make sure that they, not just lay down the hammer kind of a thing, but also let them know that, hey, if you struggle in this area, come to me. It's better to say, I struggle with, say, like this sexual drive, this lust. and go to somebody that you know will help walk you through it and how to get a grip on it, how to get control of it, then, give into it, hurt somebody through that, families and churches and everything, and then go, oh, yeah, after you're caught and the damage is done, and go, oh, yeah, I'm going to go seek counseling and therapy and all of this other stuff right now. It's sad when people wait until after they're caught to get the help that they should have got long before the problem even arose or was created. We see that in the church world all the time. We see that where, church leaders, ministries they give into these interns. It's always an intern and a staffer. I think they're the same people. Anyway, some intern or a staffer or somebody that works with them, and they end up cheating on their wife or making all kinds of nasty sexual advances and such, and it blows up everything. And again, it hurts everybody. It doesn't just hurt that pastor or that church leader. It doesn't just hurt the person that they were sexually immoral with. It hurts everybody. Even some of these names I didn't recognize, but why? So you say, well, how does it hurt you? Because these are my peers. And so when one of my peers, whether I shake their hand, know their names or not, are hurting others in the body of Christ, which I love the people in the body of Christ, we're called to shepherd them righteously, not use them as our own sexual playthings. And so when those types of things happen and people are getting hurt, what does that say about even the rest of us who should be there to help them not go that far, overcome their lust? But often it's like years and years and years later, like in the case of Robert Morris, this what was once 12-year-old girl, things were kind of covered up. She finally came out and said, no, this happened. And as the people looked into it and everything, sure enough, that's heartbreaking, because look at all the people that now are directly and even indirectly hurt. I'm talking about thousands. When I say thousands, I'm talking to the tune of hundreds of thousands of people, if not more, worldwide, because Robert Morris was a worldwide voice in the church. So we've got to clean things up. And I didn't even touch upon the Catholic Church. Oy. I'm not saying they're any worse. I'm not saying they're any better. I'm just saying that there's even more names that could come out over just the last few years of all this sexual impropriety. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to get this on. So, church leaders, you make sure, pastors, your staff, those who work at your church especially, pull them aside, pull them into a group, and start teaching them and training them and walking them through these things, and always keep an eye on them. Always stay tight and stay close. Let them have a place where they can come to you or to somebody else, an elder or something. If they're struggling, well, we can walk you through this. Because, see, I don't fault necessarily somebody for the struggle, because we just live in that world where there's all kinds of temptations. I fault when people give into the struggle without ever talking to anybody or seeking help while they're going through the struggle. Does that make sense? So, let's not let this go slip through our fingers. Let's take a hold of this in the political realm, but also in the church realm. And voters, just back to the politics for just a moment. Know who you're voting for. I know you can't always know everything about the person, but you can know a little bit about the person. If you're voting for somebody, hey, let me look up, like this Swalwell in California. What he's been doing, his sexual impropriety, has been going on for years, and people have known it. People have known it. The party knew it. The media has known it. So the information was out there. So why did anybody vote for him after the first allegation? I mean, seriously, after the first allegation comes out, why did anybody after that ever vote for him, or any other politician? Any other politician. And same thing with pastors. When you understand that there's a pastor that's all messed up, especially sexually, why are you at his church? I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying those of you who are. Why are you at that church? Well, I like the music. They got a great children's program. Oh, well, don't let the pastor around those kids of that church, There's a lot of great churches out there, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying this is all churches or even a majority. By far, it's not. There's a lot of great churches with some very loving, caring, father-like church leaders, pastors, and etc. Find one of those churches. Find one of those churches and step away from those goofy churches where there's so many allegations and things and you just are so confused. The truth is in there somewhere, of course. But, like this Carl Lentz, that guy, multiple, it says, extramarital affairs. Multiple. How is that happening and people still go to his church? I know he's gone now, but while he was, it's happening, it's out there, it has been talked about for a long time before he resigned. How is anybody at his church? Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I got to get off this because I'm thinking of other people, other pastors over the years that we've dealt with and we've heard and we've seen. And I just feel like I have been drugged through the mud, even though I didn't do that. Why? Because these are my peers. So in a way, in a sad kind of sick way, they represent me. I represent them on some level because we're peers. Doctors represent doctors, and you get it. But I am not that. And I pray to God that I'll never fall to that. And if, not if, like I'm looking for it, but if something were to happen, I pray to God that I would at least have the humility to go, I messed up, let me go get help. Or I'm struggling, let me get help before I mess up. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have a great day, but please think about this, pray about this, because we have to get this together. We have to get this together in the political realm, but especially in the church realm. And the reality of it is, until we really get it together in the church realm, we're not going to get it together in the political realm. Okay? It's just the way it works. The church is the standard bearer for culture and society. If the church is messed up, everybody and everything else is messed up. So God bless you. I love you all. I appreciate you all. You have a fantastic day, and let's get this together.